I totally avoided marketing at Eller because finance terrified me.
I was off campus for 2 years and commuting like a 40-minute drive each way.
I think that advertising agencies are really a wild place to work. They're really fun to work when you're younger.
Being able to meet all different type of people from all different types of backgrounds has been really beneficial.
I think that is one of my biggest pieces of advice.
Hi, my name is Aidan Roberts, and I am currently a double major between film and television and marketing, and I am a junior in the Eller College of Management. And then between the two of them, not entirely sure specifically what route I want to go, just somewhere in the entertainment industry, utilizing both the creative side especially. I really enjoy coming up with stories and creating new things.
Awesome. So great to meet you. I'm Jenna Rutshman. I am the Director of Marketing Strategy here at the University of Arizona. I was a student here at U of A from 1999 to 2003, and I was a media arts major and a photography minor, which is, the media arts major is now called film and television. So we had the same major, and I also wasn't quite sure what to do with my life. So I'm excited to chat with you and see where this can progress and give you hopefully some creative inspiration for your career.
I'm excited to discuss it.
Awesome. Well, tell me, how did you make the decision to come to the University of Arizona?
So most of my life I've grown up in Tucson, so it was being close to family members was a big priority for me. I also chose specifically Arizona. I tried to go out and explore all of the different colleges in Arizona, but I applied to them, and ultimately it was really a scholarship and financial aid opportunity here at the university, and it was close to home, so that was pretty easy, especially coming out of the COVID year.
Yes.
Not entirely sure what was going to happen there, so this was the best bet for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you've had such a different college career than I did. You know, when I was here, we still had blue books that you would write in and take tests on.
There are still blue books.
No way.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
There are.
That is so crazy. So tell me a little bit. So you are majoring in film and television and marketing in minor. How do you feel that your classes are intertwining at all, or do you see a big difference in the two of them?
I definitely found a lot of connections between my entertainment industries class that I've taken and a lot of the marketing and entertainment style business classes I'm currently taking. Not as much in the accounting and finance classes that I have to take. Those don't overlap quite as much, but they are important, especially with productions and budgeting. And so going in, I feel like it gives me more of a producer side of it to have both of the analytical background as well as going forward with more of the creative, coming up with stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't tell the dean at the Eller College, but I totally avoided marketing at Eller because finance terrified me. But I will say my first job out of college, after I had an internship in New York, was working as an account coordinator at a advertising agency in Phoenix. It was actually in Tempe, Arizona, called Off Madison Ave. They're still a thriving agency there. And I did not have any clue how to work with numbers or budgeting, and that was fully part of my job. So I will say, I think you have a leg up because I do think a lot of us creatives don't always want to work with numbers, but it is a part of the job. So I think that that's wonderful. And I believe you're a student worker here on campus, right?
Yes, I am. I'm a student photographer and videographer for the enrollment marketing. And so a lot of that's just covering events on campus or coming up with videos and short form content for social media pages and the YouTube. And so I just started that this semester, so I'm excited to continue learning with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, what made you lean towards film and television and marketing? Just what are some of your passions? What kind of led you down that path?
Well, to start, marketing, originally I was thinking it was completely different than what it is.
Ooh, tell me more.
Once you get into Eller and you get into the first semester, you really start to discover marketing is less of visual stuff. It's less of coming up with advertising and more of statistics, which I was not amazing at in the first few classes, but as we're going through them now, I'm really starting to understand the basis of it. And really diving deep into that. And it's pretty interesting, especially I have a marketing analytics class right now where we're doing a lot of Excel work. And there's so much that I didn't realize you could do with it. But yeah, so with marketing, originally I was going into it for more of like creative advertising, going into how do you craft a story for consumers. And then I chose film and television because I always loved to tell stories. Growing up, I love to write, I love to do art. And so anything that basically allows me to tell a story to another person was something that I was interested in. And especially with the marketing side, I figured if I could combine the two, I could come up with maybe commercials or advertising or that sort of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can definitely give insights to the advertising industry. I worked in the advertising industry in Phoenix at really 4 major firms there from, I guess, 2003 until 2016 when my husband and I decided to move back to Tucson. He's also a Tucson native, and we just wanted to raise our very young family at that time in a smaller environment. But I think that advertising agencies are really a wild place to work. They're really fun to work when you're younger. It's a lot. I'm like the eldest of millennials, but I have a lot of millennial traits, and I think one of them was, just really wanting to work hard and diving into my career. So when I got the job as an account coordinator off Madison Ave, I really went above and beyond to put in those hours. To put in those hours and learn a lot. And whenever I talk at a class at Eller or in the communications department, I always say, take that laptop everywhere you go, or a notepad, so that you can really be that sponge that is going to provide as much collaboration and kind of keeping everybody organized. I think organization is an unknown huge part of working in a creative field, whether you're a creative, a project manager, or on the client services side. I think it's really important because you usually have a lot of projects happening at the same time, and trying to figure out, the goals and objectives of each, and being able to turn your brain on and off to different projects that you're working on, and working within project management tools. So probably, some of your experience at Eller will really, I think, lean into that, which I think you'll really find really useful. So tell me, are you hoping, you had said the entertainment industry, kind of a big industry.
Yes.
So I know when I was in the same major as you, I had this dream of going in and being an editor for movie trailers. It was very specific. I don't know why. Or I think I also wanted to do music videos, because who doesn't want to create music videos? That was the heyday of MTV. Actually, it was when MTV started to decline and got a lot of reality TV, but we won't talk about that. And so what type of entertainment industry are you thinking? Because it's a pretty broad industry.
Yes. I specifically probably, going out of college, I do want to start maybe in a marketing agency like you've spoken about, and kind of just explore. That is another question I have for you later. Kind of explore the different avenues, see how the advertisement agencies work, especially when it comes to the film side of the industry. I also enjoy creative development. Like I said, I like to create stories. I like to come up with a bunch of different storylines, and that's something that I would potentially want to go into, especially for animated films. That's something that I'm really interested in and would like to focus on, because I do enjoy writing a lot, and I do enjoy coming up with storyboarding, and so that was something that I thought, potentially it's something I could go into and look more at.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Were you able to pursue any of those passions in high school? You were in high school here in Tucson. I'm not sure which high school you were at. Did they have any sort of classes that you could kind of dip your toe in?
There were some. I took an animation course, and then the second half of it got cut off for COVID, unfortunately. But that was kind of where I started to really want to go more into the film and animation and editing side of that world. And then I also wanted to take a creative writing class that they offered, but there were too many people who wanted to take it, so I wasn't able to. But I was able to be a part of creative writing clubs and the art department. I took the AP art class there as well, so that helped me craft a story around a concept that we were working on. Yeah. And so some of the classes helped, I would say that. I definitely think coming in to college, I was able to take a lot more of the classes that I was more interested in, especially for the creative writing route and with film.
Yeah. I love that you have like a specific with, animation that you're kind of leaning towards, because that really gleans like so many interesting opportunities from shorts to full animated films to places like Pixar and Disney, but also, these kind of smaller boutiques that are doing like really interesting things.
Yeah.
So what would you say are some of your challenges here at University of Arizona? I was really happy that you just said that you've been able to get the classes that you want to get, because I know that can be a challenge for some of the popular classes. So what are some of the things you're facing right now?
I think some of the most challenging parts are definitely more of the mathematics-based stuff for me.
Yeah.
Having to go through accounting and finance classes, while they were definitely helpful in understanding the industry, it's not exactly something that I am passionate about, so those were pretty difficult to get through. And then also, I was off campus for 2 years and commuting like a 40-minute drive each way. So that kind of limited a lot of like the social stuff that I could do. But now that I am closer to campus, it's definitely helped a lot with being able to go to clubs and kind of working a little bit more closer with my teammates in Eller as well. This past semester, we worked in cohorts in different groups. So I was working with the same group of people throughout the entire semester. So being able to be here pretty close to campus and get here whenever we need to was definitely a benefit for me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we definitely know as, marketers on campus, you talked about statistics a little bit, like it is something that we utilize and look at, and it's a known statistic that if students have a hard time finding their community, they're less likely to graduate. So talk a little bit more about the community that you've found. You mentioned clubs. Have you joined anything here on campus, or maybe that's relatively adjacent to campus?
Yeah, I have joined, I've tried a few different things. In the very beginning, I tried Creative Writing Club. That was pretty good. It just didn't work for the rest of my semester plans. And then I want to join the ASL club. I've just finished my 4th semester, and while I won't be continuing with the minor, I do want to keep continuing and practicing those skills.
Good for you.
And then I also joined a club called DECA. And so they have that throughout high school as well, and they have a collegiate chapter here at the university. And so I joined that last semester, and then what really was a pull for me for that was being able to travel and compete. I'm a very competitive person in basically anything I do. And so being able to go to a different state and compete against all these different colleges was a big opportunity for me.
That's super cool. So at the collegiate level, what are you competing? Is it like is it case study you're putting together, or talk me through that? That's cool.
There's 3 different opportunities you can compete in. One is a case comp, where you're going in and you get a case. And these are for all sorts of different topics. So there's entertainment, there's sports, there's anything you can think of. There's a food industries one as well. And so you go in, and it depends on the event, but you get an hour to 30 minutes to read the case, come up with a solution, and create a PowerPoint or a presentation. And then you get about 15, probably less depending on the event. You go in and you present it to a judge. And so that's the first option. The option that I did last semester was a prepared event. So we came up with a real world problem, and we created an advertisement campaign around that. And so my partner and I, we chose In-N-Out because they were expanding to the East Coast for the first time, and we thought that would be something interesting to come at. Yeah. And so we created a plan. We created, I think there was 20 pages worth of content there, but it was really exciting to be able to be in a smaller club, especially, and going and traveling with people. And so I think I really found a lot of community members and friendships in that club as well.
That's awesome. So how are you going to convince those East Coasters to eat In-N-Out?
We did a lot of different things. Some of them were billboards. Some of them were a T-shirt campaign that we were partnering with local charities. And a lot of it for In-N-Out is the cultural aspect, because there is such a strong pull already for the cultural community when it comes to In-N-Out. And so we found statistics like where there was a town, I don't remember which one, but an In-N-Out just came to that state for the first time, and there was like 40-hour waits. And so police officers were literally tweeting like, oh, this is how long it is for days on end.
Yeah, being an East Coaster myself, the first time I went to California with my college friends, we did a road trip to go see a football game, the UCLA U of A football game. I think we won. I have no idea. I just remember I do remember going to In-N-Out, and they were just watching me. I was like, okay, guys. It's great. I love In-N-Out, but In-N-Out did open here in Tucson when I was in college, and it was, I think it opened first in Phoenix maybe, or Casa Grande or somewhere, and people were driving to go and wait, and I was just like, you guys, good burgers in town. But I think In-N-Out is a whole vibe. It's got such that California culture, so I think it's interesting how true to their brand they've stayed, and I think that's something that's interesting when you think about branding, is the live aspect of branding. While you're on, you're in In-N-Out, you know what to expect, you know what the booths are going to look like, you know what the cups are going to look like, and to stay true to that is so important. I just was at the American Marketing Association in Chicago. A few of my fellow coworkers and I spoke, and one of the keynotes was talking about this new brand campaign, and it was all about how a brand is your culture, and how brands really need to lean into that people are purchasing them or participating in that brand because it is a reflection of who they themselves are. And McDonald's was just getting slayed in the media. Like, it was not going well for McDonald's, and they leaned into this really interesting idea of thinking about, no matter who you are, you have a McDonald's order. And when this keynote said this, I was like, oh, wow, that's like so true. Because when you're on road trips, and especially if you're in small towns, sometimes your only option is McDonald's. And so they went to different famous people, from people like Travis Scott to Mariah Carey to even more obscure folks, and did a campaign about what is your McDonald's order. And McDonald's order, they made no new products. They didn't do any new slogans or anything. And they did these ads about what these famous people eat, and their sales has gone through the roof. I wish I should have looked up the stats. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. But it was really interesting to see that in real life. And I think that's one thing that I've always really leaned into and tried to do, is continuing education, is to think about, how does McDonald's relate to something like the University of Arizona? Well, the University of Arizona at its core is, of course, higher education and a Research One school and all of those important things, but it's also a lifestyle brand. There is an entire vibe on campus, and there's a culture on campus, and there's different communities on campus that individuals and students find themselves gravitating towards to express themselves, especially at those pivotal years when they're in college. And I think it's so fun to think about that in terms of our advertising. And so one thing we did was kind of thinking about the Zona Zoo, which is an actual ASUA club, which I did not realize. I just thought it was a bunch of kids that bought tickets in that area. And so leaning into that fire that they have, and they're McHale is well known for being one of the hardest basketball arenas to play in, and thinking about how could we use that group to talk about our culture and lifestyle on campus. So
absolutely,
you'll see some of the Zona Zoo kids on the light rail in the near future. Actually, in the new year it'll be started. But trying to play with that is a really fun part of working in marketing and advertising, for sure.
I know. I did have a question.
Yeah, please.
What is your favorite part about working in a marketing agency from your prior experiences?
Yeah.
And then what would you say is probably the least favorite part, or the part that you have to work most at?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it's actually changed over the phases in my life. So I started as an account coordinator off Madison Ave. Then I moved to also still a very successful agency called Reister. That is actually one of our preferred vendors here at the University of Arizona. So,
we took a tour of them
Great.
recently.
That's wonderful. So, what's wild is I worked for them for many years. I ran a very large account. It was very stressful. It was a lot of hours. I learned a lot. We did a lot of video recording. We did lots of TV commercials with huge productions. And I was very happy when I left that firm. I went to one called Terralever that was wildly different. So Reister's a very traditional agency. Terry Lever only did very high-end development for apps and websites, and they didn't do really traditional advertising. They really leaned into kind of how digital marketing was bubbling up in the mid-2000s. So when I left Reister, even though I was really burnt out, I did not burn any bridges. I worked, I think my last day I worked until like 8 o'clock at night. And I think I asked if I could take my computer home for the weekend to like make sure all my files were saved, and they were like, stop it. But I really wanted to make sure that my team was, people I really care about had what they needed. And then now I'm, 42 years old. I'm a mom. I'm working at U of A. I'm not on the agency side anymore. All of a sudden, I'm the client, and I got on a Zoom, and here are all of these faces that I was like, oh my goodness, hi, we used to work together. And so I think that was a huge lesson that I learned at that phase in my life, was really, even though you're burnout and you want to go try something new, to realize that that firm that you were at gave you a lot to move forward in your career. And so I think that was a very valuable lesson in my mid 20s. And I had already mentioned, I think in my very early career, was raising your hand, to offer to help. I think making sure that you are organized and prepared. I think that you can get unorganized very easily in a digital world, but you can be organized also very easily in a digital world. So it's like lean towards understanding, file sharing and organization in a digital space, I think is really important. But also, I think something I didn't do well, which I would advise, and I think the younger generation does a better job at that, is prioritizing also like having a life. I didn't really have a life for a long time, and so I look back and go, I probably should have, not worked until 7 o'clock every night and gone and done some things. But I really enjoyed my career through agencies. So, at Off Medicine Ave, I was a coordinator. At Reister, I had one giant account, and I learned so much. When we did TV commercials, we would fly to LA and cast those, and they would hire production companies, and we would do sound editing and post-production. And I personally think post-production is so cool. So it's, when the storyboards are done and everything's been filmed and the sound hasn't quite happened yet, and it's all working together in that post-production of adding those nuances of color correction and animation and some of those different effects that they can do. To me, I always thought that was like a really magical part of the process. And there's still firms that, we at the University of Arizona work with in Phoenix, and I'm like, oh, that's Sam, the recording studio guy. Like, I remember Sam.
Who they are.
So I think that just trying to stay true to who you are and understanding the role, but also willingness to maybe go the extra mile to learn something, I think always paid off for me. And then when I worked at Terry Lever, it was just terrifying because I went into this environment where it was all these hardcore back-end developers and front-end developers and UX designers, and they were changing the methodology that they used for project management, and they were leaning into an agile process that's called Scrum. And as the account director, the project managers I worked very closely with, and I had to really understand how this was all going to work. I think I definitely did a little fake it till you make it, but I also really listened to my coworkers and tried to learn as much as possible as I was getting up to speed with that. And that agency was super fun to work at. We were during a growth period. It was only about maybe 30 to 40 people when I joined, mostly male, and all of us young ladies were similar of age, which was fun. And we didn't work with any Phoenix clients. So we were traveling a bit, but we worked with cool clients. So it was like Zappos and DC Shoes and Teva. I worked with CBS Television and also some really, I guess this was a Phoenix one. We worked with some challenging ones like Honeywell, where my team was creating an aviation app for pilots who are like solo piloting for their navigation. And I remember just going home to my husband and being like, so if we mess this up, like, could this mess up, like, this poor pilot? Just thinking about those things, it's not something you think about when you're in college, that, like, the effects that advertising or an app that you're developing could have. And so, Terra Lever has merged into a more traditional plus content marketing and digital firm that's called LT now, and they're also a partner that we work with all the time. And there's a slew of people that I know there that I've stayed really close with. So that's also been a really fun way to think about it. And, here at the University of Arizona, I think we have a lot to learn. Our central marketing team's always been quite small. And we've grown a lot over the past few years. And we have a lot of ex-agency people who are kind of, how could we run more like an agency, and how can we provide more resources and help our marketers across campus with resources, providing them opportunities to be more consistent with the brand. And something that we're trying to figure out is like our client services model, which is something that I've worked in my whole career. I have lots of funny titles because agency they love titles and changing names and things like that. But essentially, I've always been on the strategy and client service side. And so, being able to go to some of our agency partners and being like, so, I worked for you in 2014. What have you updated with your systems and how you're managing your clients and your workload? And I think trying to adapt has been something that's been really fun.
That is interesting. I have another question kind of similar to adapting to the workplace. Yeah. How would you say, with your job specifically, AI would change your role, and potentially coming out of college, how that would change our view of the marketing space going into it?
Totally. I mean, I think AI is so fun. I have been definitely an early adopter with it. I use it probably almost daily, not only for work, but also like my personal life. My 12-year-old's a musician and is going to be at a young performer at a folk festival, and I wrote a bio and I dumped it in there, and then they made it shorter for me, and I was like, absolutely, thank you for saving me that time. But I think with specifically with marketing and creative jobs, I really don't think AI will ever replace the creativeness that a person can bring to the table, because we both have unique experiences, we've both lived unique lives, and we're going to approach different creative problems to solve those in different ways. And I think the way that you can use AI is to maybe help do some brainstorming ahead of time, especially if you're young in your career. I think you can almost like deal with AI as a Kickstarter of trying to understand what might be out there in that realm. I remember once like Sony and Apple put out almost the exact same advertisement for their music systems when it was iTunes or iPods, I guess at that time, and whatever Sony had. And I thought that was so wild that these two different creative firms came out with something that looks so similar. And so I think AI can really give advantage of if you can use creative prompts. One of the first things that I read was, all about saying, please act like a copywriter and look at this and edit this to make it in a more formal business tone or something like that. I was the chairperson for our marketing and communications conference on campus this year, and I don't really like numbers. I don't really like dealing with schedules, and our team was having a bit of a debate of how many sessions we should have, what really makes sense. And so I literally asked ChatGPT to give me 3 different recommendations to have, I don't remember the exact prompt, but I said act like an event planner and give me 3 different recommendations for 3 sessions in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, 3 breakout sessions, a keynote, lunch, breakfast for 450 people. I want it to start at this time and end at this time. And it was like, boop. And by asking for different, options, I was able to go to my team that was having a bit of a debate, and it was, 12 people on this committee, and say, here's some options. And I was full disclosure, and I think that's a huge thing with AI, is to have full disclosure of like, these are random options to get us started, is one bubbling, and then let's customize it for us. Because I think that's where I think a lot of people are going off the rails with AI is thinking the AI can just do their job. But really what's going to make it more powerful is if you add, edit, augment, and use it as kind of a first draft or a small part of your process.
That makes sense.
So you are a Tucson kind of native. You were here for
the
most
part
of your education. So what was it like for you, entering the University of Arizona? Did you feel like you understood what resources were available to you to help you, succeed in your academics?
I don't know if I really... That could just be me coming into college not really doing a whole ton of research, considering I applied to the 3 state schools and I was like, okay, I'll just go to the one that fits best. But coming in as an in-state, specifically in Tucson, I figured, well, it's just the university. It's just right down the street. Right, I don't think I really understood what all of the resources were. Rather, maybe an out-of-state student would have done a little bit more research into what are the opportunities here. Rather, I knew coming in, I knew what the DRC was because I needed those accommodations. And then just kind of some basic programs that our advisors would send us is probably the extent of my knowledge for a lot of it, until I got in, and then I learned as I went, basically.
Yeah. So what are some of the resources that you are tapping into specifically with the DRC?
Specifically with the DRC is their extra testing time for disabilities. I have dyslexia. Yes. And so it's important for me to have the extra time. I've known this since I was in elementary school that this was an accommodation I needed. And so it's really helped me succeed all throughout my schooling, especially coming into college, and being able to have control over that. Not needing to really ask, but I can just go into their system and schedule what I need to schedule, and they'll do what I need mostly without questions asked. So I think that's really important, especially to support that community on campus. Yeah,
absolutely. You're a much more evolved dyslexic person than I am. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was also in elementary school, but I really I fought it because at that time they would take you out of your class and put you in a different class, and I felt very socially awkward about it. As you can tell, just chatting with me, I'm a very extroverted, outgoing person, and so I always felt like being classified made me different. And then really until I joined U of A, and so I came here. My older brother, who's also dyslexic, came here first and joined. He did 2 things that he kind of forced me to do too, to be honest, and both I felt were positive in the long run. The first was he wanted me to go through recruitment for the Greek system because we grew up in a really small town. And he's like, you always were in clubs, you always did sports, you always had a big social network, and I think you should at least give it a try. I had a lot of preconceived notions as to what, sorority and fraternity men and women were. And so I went in with kind of a chip on my shoulder. But then I ended up meeting, almost all of my bridesmaids were in the sorority that I was in. I'm still an advisor at it. And so it really helped me find a community. And then they also, at that time, really encouraged, study hours and finding people in the house that were similar majors to you. And then the other thing that he really wanted me to do was become classified for dyslexia again, because I had kind of dropped my classification, and join the SALT Center, which I have no idea what it stands for, and I really should know. But the SALT Center is a wonderful resource here on campus that is unique to students that have needs like dyslexia. And so by joining that, I was able to have a special advisor and have the extra time and have a note taker. And the note taker thing was really funny to me. I turned 40 during COVID, and so my husband had one of those little videos put together where all my friends said something nice. And my friend that was actually in the same major as us, she was able to be paid a certain amount of money per month to be my note taker.
Wow.
And it was hilarious because she's one of my best friends, and it was just like, okay, well, I guess this is pro for both of us now. But the SALT Center really, I think, made me succeed at the University of Arizona, because my first semester, I wasn't part of it, and I had a really hard time getting the classes that I needed the second semester freshman year, and that's when I really started taking advantage of those resources. And I mean, then, we had just gotten internet in our dorm rooms. We had just gotten, I think, my husband's name is Cody. His email that was given to him was cody@arizona.edu in 1996, which I'm like, that's so good. It wasn't even Cody R, it was just Cody. And so, it was pretty early in the days of higher education with technology. And I remember, asking my mom when she was at work, I was on the phone with her and I asked her to log in to look at my grades, and I totally had bombed a class, full fail. And it was a math class. And I thought I was so smart because I handed my homework in on Wednesdays rather than Friday lab that was at 8 a.m. because I was prioritizing other things. And I was like, well, I'm good because I turned the homework in, so whatever. And I didn't realize that attendance at that class and turning in homework specifically on that day was 40% of your grade. And I didn't do well on the test because I'm not good at math. So I think reading the syllabus and having that extra help from the SALT Center was something that was instrumental for me. But I'm so glad that you're getting a lot of those resources through the DRC.
Yeah, through the DRC. I previously hadn't really known what the SALT Center was meant for. It's something I definitely want to look into going forward for the rest of my college career. But I do know, having spell check is my life. I could not survive without spell check.
Well, going back to your AI question, I definitely have some complicated emails that I need to send to fairly senior, I don't know why I said fairly, to totally senior level people here at the University of Arizona. And sometimes I just look at it and go, I don't know if this is making sense. I don't know if it's my dyslexic brain or what's happening. And I'll ask, ChatGPT, and I'll say, please proofread for clarity and grammar. But I will say, essentially, in the prompt, don't change it. I want it to be my words. And it's been really helpful. It will say, I changed this for clarity and this for grammar, or it will say, it's very clear, but this was a problem with your grammar. Because that's something I struggle with to this day. I think also, one of the most helpful hints I can give is being in a career and then, starting at the lower level and then moving up. And if you get into management positions, is finding people who are really good yin and yang to you. So, I had a coworker that I hired at my first firm she was an apprentice, which is essentially just a paid intern, because a lot of interns weren't paid then. And she was a fantastic writer and a really good proofreader. And so she would always review proposals before I sent them to our boss. And she and I randomly worked together, I think, at several agencies and are still the best of friends. But I think trying to lean on people that can help support you, but you also have to lend a helping hand back, so it's not just a take. But I think that's been something that's a really good lesson to me. And as I get, older in my career and more experienced, I'm also trying to give space in the room for people who might not have had experience in a project that we're working on and might have some kind of, entry level questions about it. And, rather than being no, I know how to do that. It's answer those questions, let them have space, give people space for ideas, because, just because you're the leader or the manager in the room doesn't mean you should be the loudest person or the first to speak.
I like that mentality.
I try to do it.
I try. Sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
I know, especially working with teams this past semester in Eller, it's been difficult when I want to share and I want to have control, but I had to put myself back where I'm putting myself in a position where I'm not the leader so that I can make sure everybody is heard is something I'm definitely working on.
Yeah. That's great. And then having your family here in town, do you lean on your mom and your family a lot to help guide you when you're feeling a little lost or struggling with someone on a group project or something like that?
Definitely. Yes, I have conversations with them a lot about the situations that I get into or the struggles or the frustration. So it's definitely been good having them here close by. And then I also speak with my grandparents quite a bit.
Oh, that's great.
I have a really good connection with them. And being able to just have advice from several different areas is really beneficial, especially working in teams when I'm I really just want to say something, but I need to just talk it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, as I was a first generation student coming from across the country, so like not only did I have a total culture shock, I grew up in Ithaca, New York area. I actually grew up in a tiny town like outside of Ithaca, New York, and it was pretty, hippy dippy, a lot of outdoorsy type stuff. Most people were entrepreneurs or farmers. And then we had Cornell, so we also had this really interesting like diversity in this small town from the professors and things like that were at Cornell. So when I came to Tucson, I was like shocked by the sunshine.
Yes.
I was like really excited about the sunshine, but it was so sunny all the time. And I was a photography minor, and I had learned, darkroom photography in upstate New York where it's constantly cloudy. And that was like the craft I understood and loved. And moving here, it was right when digital was kind of coming up, and it was so bright, and going through that. And I remember, it was hard for me to call my parents who didn't have a college experience. My mom had never moved away from her large family, small town, in the Ithaca area. And so I know I struggled with that and finding people to kind of, talk to. I had my older brother, but love you, Joe, but he's still an older brother, that has other priorities and things that he's doing. And that was something that even in my community within the sorority that I joined, there wasn't a ton of first generation students. But then when you kind of were willing to be vulnerable and talk about it in classes, and even with the members of the house, I did find a few like-minded people that were struggling with the same things, because I'm sure there was amazing resources on campus at that time, but they weren't as forward in communication. There was no social media. Our email was barely used. There's no digital screens and things like that. So I've been so proud and, try to just shout the praises of the Student Success and Retention Initiatives team with what they've done with the Bear Down building and all the resources there, from peer mentoring and Thrive. And there's all these, I don't know if you've been in the building, but there's all these little nooks and crannies to like get cozy and study in. I also just did a tour of the old chem building.
I haven't been in there yet.
It's really cool, and you can totally just go in, and there's tons of little spaces for students. And the director of chem and biochem was giving us a tour because we were doing a photo shoot there. And he goes, I'm kind of bummed because during the summertime there was no students here, and he found his own little nook and cranny. And then we went and saw, and there was like students everywhere. So I think that's definitely something to try to find your space. What's your favorite place to kind of study on campus or visit if you need like a minute?
I would say, well, now I'm kind of stuck in Eller a lot of the time.
Eller Island, it's a full
I'm in
thing.
Eller Island, yep. So a lot of the time, now that I'm closer, I'll go home. But when I was off campus, it was definitely going to the library. I love looking at ENR too. And so sometimes I would be there. And sometimes like the children's library, the World of Words, is also a good space because they actually have comfortable seating, which isn't like everywhere on campus. So that's definitely
a lot of plastic chairs.
There's a lot of plastic chairs, not a lot of cushion.
Yeah, old chem, you got to check it out. They've got some really pretty cushy chairs.
I definitely will. Yeah. I need to go over there because I've watched it. They're blocking it off the whole time, and then finally I was like, I've never actually been inside. So yeah,
it's really interesting how they were able to do that because it's a building from the 40s, and they've updated it, and some of the general education classes in that building are wildly like forward thinking with like whiteboards at every station. You can plug your computer in. It's really innovative and very cool.
I would say that was definitely a change coming from the high school setting to this. Like the environment was entirely different. Like I'd never been in a classroom with 200 plus people before. So getting used to that was definitely like, wow, there's so many people. And then you also like, especially coming in as a freshman, you meet people in those classes and then you never see them again.
Right.
So it makes it a little hard. I think that could be pretty isolating for students who are coming either out of state or are coming in with no prior connections at the same school. Also freeing because you get to meet a whole bunch of different people, but also making sure you keep those connections are hard.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's something that I hope students really think through when they're looking at their general education courses, because I think a lot of times it can be, I know for me it was a little bit of check the box. You know, I needed to graduate in 4 years. You know, I had, you know, I was on Pell Grants, and I needed to graduate in 4 years. And so I know that there was a moment where I was like, well, that class fits at that time and it fits this box. And, you know, sometimes I wish that I would have, you know, slowed down a little bit to think about, you know, what is going to help open my perspective. And I was just asked a question. I gave a short presentation about my profession to my daughter's middle school, like 7th and 8th grade combined class. And her teacher asked me, you know, if sociology ever enters the world in marketing. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's all about sociology. You know, it's all about understanding the personas of individuals, and not in like a demographic way, but, you know, what is going to make these people take action to, you know, complete whatever the objective is of that marketing tool and task that you're at. So I thought that was really interesting. My husband was an Eller marketing grad. We didn't know each other at U of A, but he always talks about how his favorite classes were the sociology classes. And I'm like, we need to get like the sociologists and the marketers like talking more.
Yes, we do.
I think something that a lot of students don't always realize going into college, I think a lot of, especially local Arizona students don't always realize, but definitely the out-of-state students is, you know, coming to campus, you're obviously going to learn and your mind is going to open up in new ways. But how have you found that it's really changed you as a person for the better and opened your eyes up to new things in society that maybe you weren't really aware of when you were younger?
I would definitely say a lot of the general education courses that I've taken. I took last semester a course all about, what is it called? It was about privacy and surveillance. It was through the Honors College. It was really good, but it also made me very paranoid. Just understanding what apps are doing, what all of these different societal features are doing to specifically target you or to surveil you, even like the way schools are set up or it comes from a prison setup originally. So I think that was really interesting to me. And then also being able to meet all different type of people from all different types of backgrounds has been really beneficial, especially opening my eyes to different societal issues or how it affects people specifically, like how it personally will affect them if certain political decisions are made or that sort of thing. Being able to understand that fully through also like learn through the creative side too. I've taken a creative writing course where we really analyzed a lot of current events and things that were going on, and so I think that has been beneficial. I also believe that being able to come up with my own research has been really insightful for me. Going into my senior year in the honors, we have to do an honors thesis, so I'm still trying to plan that. But originally, there was a program that they had for first semester students coming in, and it was the first semester project. And it was basically a smaller version of the thesis. And so you were able to work with faculty and staff. And so I specifically targeted mine for disability representation in young adults and children's literature. And so being able to reach out to different faculty members or people in the industry has been really helpful to learn that side of things and kind of bring it all together, even in a research paper or a creative outlet, has been interesting.
Absolutely. I think that's so insightful, and I think that, you know, through your own learned experiences and leaning into that is such a great way to go about your academics and your higher education learning. I know for me, you know, coming here, as I mentioned earlier, it definitely was a culture shock, but once I kind of found my feet, I really was so excited to learn new perspectives and understand the culture in Tucson and what makes, you know, everything kind of different from the East Coast and West Coast and the Southwest and all these different things. And I remember taking American history classes, and my dad has always been an American history buff, and calling him and being like, Dad, just rattling off all these things and having these rich conversations with my parents that hadn't really happened as much in high school, because I think you get so laser focused in high school.
Yes.
I have this project due or I have this paper due. And I also think I really enjoyed I had a wonderful experience with an internship program through Pace University. So it's in New York. You dealt with COVID. I dealt with 9/11. I was here on campus when the Twin Towers were struck. Being from New York, it felt very close to home, even though I was so far away. And my older cousin actually worked in one of the towers. He was able to get out, but the phone lines were down. And it was just kind of one of those moments of like, wow, what is happening? And I was supposed to study abroad, and my parents were really nervous about sending me abroad in that political climate and what was going to happen and the unknowns of that. So I decided to take this, the credits transferred back to U of A through Pace University. I lived downtown New York. I took all of these tourism type classes, an international business class, which was way out of my comfort zone. Made a lot of friends. There was randomly another person from U of A in this small program, and she and I are still friends. We were and she was from Phoenix.
Big coincidence.
Yeah, she was from Phoenix and had never been to New York City, so I was her tour guide for the summer, which was super fun. Made definitely lifelong connections through that, and I had an internship in the Arista Records, and so it's like a big record company, and I think feeling that I was really winning college. I was getting good grades after I joined the SALT Center. I'd made a lot of friends. Going to be the bottom of a totem pole at a very prestigious record company in New York City was really one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was very humbling. I worked really hard. I learned about all these different assets of the recording industry, but it also kind of reminded me of what I wanted to be and what I wanted to move forward with. And I have a huge love for music, but it also reminded me that I wanted to work in a really fast pace. I wanted to be around lots of new projects and different things that didn't feel, corporate-y or mundane in any way.
Do you think that internship opportunity, I know previously you had mentioned there in the very beginning that you would wanted to go into editing for film trailers. Do you think that internship experience really changed your direction and your route from college to where you are now? Yeah,
I think it really did. I mean, I think what's really interesting is I think if I was a student right now and I had that internship and that experience, the internet is so much more powerful than it was, I feel so old when I say these things, but it was 20 years ago, and it was hard if you didn't know people and you didn't have that good old American, someone to connect you, it was hard to break into different industries. And so I really wanted to go, and I thought work in the music industry, but my degree hadn't really gotten me there because I was focused on something else. And I think if I was to do it now, I probably would have gone and gotten an extended degree in sound engineering or production or something like that, and really tried to lean into that. And so I think what was kind of a happenstance was just applying for a bunch of jobs. I was in Phoenix, I was living with my older brother, and I just knew an advertising agency would provide me with that culture that I wanted, that was fast-paced and really hard, but you learn a lot.
Absolutely.
And so landing that was such a key element. And I sent my resumes out and I tried really hard and I prepared for my interviews and I went in, and I think that's one thing that I have always very consciously done is prepare myself for each level of my career. I got thrown into management and I was like, what am I doing? And then learning how to manage people, and there is a skill set to it to get the best out of people who work with you. And I think that was something that I learned early, and I think that has really helped me be successful. I think the other thing that helped me early on was I remember the day Twitter launched. I think it was 2006, and I remember being there and being like, this is so dumb. No one's ever going to use this. And I remember in early days of Twitter, people were tweeting what they were eating. It was a whole vibe. And then our developers used to use it to communicate, almost like a chat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are we talking on this public platform? But everything evolves, and that's really the point of that. I remember Facebook first launching their advertising platform. And you cannot be complacent in changes that are happening in your career. And I've seen people that don't want to change, that feel that newspapers were never going to go away, that print was always going to be king. And I think if you can lean into really understanding what is next and interesting, I was really lucky to have a mentor early on in Jay Bear, who's a U of A alum. Woohoo! I actually just remember that. And he owned a small firm that joined the agency that I was at the time, and they were just super content, super SEO, super tech focused, doing websites in different ways. And he's gone on to write, New York Times bestselling books. Mm-hmm. He was a keynote at one of our One conferences. He actually has kind of like downgraded his profession and now does like a tequila Instagram. It's actually pretty funny. But I think that is one of my biggest pieces of advice is, if you get thrown into something like management, figure out what your style is and why it's your style and learn how to grow that, but also keep up on technology. AI can be really scary and it can be a whole wide world thing, but like learn about it because it's here,
It's here and it's not going to leave.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a project management system that your team works on that you hate, you need to learn how to use it because you need to be a good team player. Mm-hmm. So I think that those are some of the things that I've really leaned into my career that I think have continued to make me successful, is that learning and being aware. Having self-awareness is like wildly important.
Going into my senior year, coming out of the junior year, what would be one thing you would recommend a college student to do right now, mm-hmm. As we progress into our future careers and just to prepare for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually advice I wish I would have gotten, because I look back at senior year, Jenna, mm-hmm. and I know I had a lot of fun and I worked really hard, but I really was like, when you graduate, a job just shows up, right? So I think my piece of advice is kind of twofold. I think that there is things that you can do on campus mm-hmm. to kind of get ideas of what you would like to do. And one of them I was terrified to do, and I don't really know why, but is like, go talk to your professors. Go and say, and your TAs and your advisors, and say, I'm interested in animation. I'm interested in production. I don't understand what that path could look like. Do you know anyone in that field? Mm-hmm. Have you worked in that field? And I think trying to get a better understanding of, what they think and how things they would recommend. I have one of my best friends from U of A. We worked together. We found out after working together we had the same major. She's gone on to be a successful Peabody Award-winning documentarian, and she does editing for really cool series on HBO and things like that. And after college, she went and did a very specific extended degree in Australia. And so I had this experience of going and learning more hands-on film technique for sure. Beyond our major that we learned at University of Arizona, and has been able to apply that to her successful career. But I think once if you listen to your professors about different niches, you might be able to find some areas to talk to. I think the other thing is looking outside. You could actually use AI to do this, is say, maybe you want to move to Portland and, put into spit out some production agencies that are in Portland, or animation firms, or Wired & Kennedy is pretty cool in Portland. But I think doing something like that would be really interesting, and then using LinkedIn to reach out and see if anybody would do an informational conversation with you, mm-hmm. to really try to understand how did they get to their career, or what would they recommend to someone like you. You can also use the good old U of A connections, and I will say it is wild, the wildcats that you will meet. Wildcats. But it is really wild, the alumni that you'll meet along the way that will 100% be willing to talk to you mm-hmm. and learn more. I also think it's like that second connection. So, you look at someone at a firm in Portland and they have a connection that's me. Don't be afraid to call that person and say, would you connect me to this person you're friends with? I'm really interested in what they do. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's kind of that initiative to put yourself out there is hard.
Yes.
And you'll get a lot of people that won't respond, but you will get some people that will respond. And I think that will help you think about internships and entry-level positions that you could try out to get a taste for the industry and see where you want to land. It was lovely talking with you today. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure what to expect, and I think that you're on such a great path, and I really, really advise you to look into some of those internships and connect. we got to connect.
I
and keep in
definitely
touch.
will. It's been really great talking to you and learning about your path from college experiences all the way to where you are now. And I really appreciate the advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it was wonderful, and I appreciate it. Have a good day and good luck.
Thank you. You too.